Greetings to our Reba Church family and to the wider Immanuel Approach community. We love you. We miss you. With the masks and the social distancing, we especially miss your smiles and your hugs. Welcome back for Immanuel Approach Training segment number 3. In this segment, I'm going to explain how our brains are designed to work best in community and how we can increase the effectiveness of the Immanuel approach by deliberately integrating this intriguing bit of brain science into the process. And then Charlotte and I will demonstrate. We will demonstrate again the initial steps in the Immanuel approach process up to the point of establishing an interactive connection with the Lord. We will demonstrate again using a positive memory that includes experiencing God's presence. And we will demonstrate the application of this new bit of brain science by Charlotte repeatedly coaching me to describe everything that comes into my awareness. Actually, she has already been doing this for all of the demonstrations. But now, you will be more aware of it, and you will understand why she's doing it. Before launching into this new topic, let me quickly summarize points from previous segments that will be particularly relevant. Immanuel truth. The wonderful, good news Immanuel truth is that God is always with us, God is always glad to be with us, and God always wants to connect with us. Relational circuits. We have circuits in our brains that serve as the neurological hardware for running relationships. And we can connect with each other and with God much more easily when these relational circuits are online and strongly active. Positive memories and appreciation. We can predictably, reliably, consistently get these relational circuits online and strongly active by recalling and connecting with positive memories and then deliberately generating or stirring up strong appreciation. Interactive connection with God. We can establish a living, interactive, two-way, back and forth connection with God by inviting God's presence into the positive memory, asking God to help us perceive His presence, and then noticing whatever comes into our awareness. The special value of positive memories that include an experience of God's presence. Finally, our relationships are memory mapped. That is, our relationships are carried in our memories. Also, reconnecting with a memory recreates, at least to some extent, the same mind-brain conditions that were present at the time of the original experience. Using positive memories that include an experience of God's presence takes advantage of these two pieces of brain science. And now, back to our topic for this teaching segment: how our brains are designed to work best in community, and how we can increase the effectiveness of the Immanuel approach by deliberately integrating this intriguing bit of brain science into the process. Actually, there are a number of ways in which our brains are designed to work best in community. But here's the piece that is most relevant for our Immanuel approach exercises. Our brains are more able to feel the importance and understand the meaning of our mental content when we describe it out loud to another person. There's actually quite a bit of evidence supporting these conclusions, and I discussed this supporting evidence in detail in the Big Lion book. For the purposes of this presentation, I will just be providing a brief summary. So, some of the evidence supporting these conclusions comes from emotional healing case studies. For example, when I was 18 months old, my brother and I got sent away to stay with friends for 3 to 4 weeks during a time when my mother was so physically ill that she couldn't care for us. My brother was 4, so he could understand what was happening. But at 18 months, I did not yet have enough language to understand the reassurances that were being offered. That my mother was sick, but that eventually she would be okay and I would see her again. At a year and a half, with minimal language, I experienced this month-long separation in much the same way as I would have experienced my parents' sudden deaths. They disappeared suddenly and stayed away much longer than my ability to understand or cope with their absence. This extended separation from my parents was certainly more than I was able to successfully process, and therefore the whole experience ended up as psychological trauma for me. What happened when I first started to do healing work on these memories is the data point that's relevant for this discussion. I focused on the triggered thoughts and emotions that I guessed to be coming from these memories, and then asked the Lord to help me access the underlying trauma. And immediately after I asked the Lord to help me access the underlying traumatic memories, thoughts and images start coming into my mind. I get an image of holding a telephone to my ear. The receiver is huge. I'm looking up to where the cord goes into the wall, so I'm obviously like really small, like the size of a 1.5-year-old. I'm looking around this room. There's a doorway leading to a hallway to my right. There's a big sofa across the room in front of me. And then this thought comes to me. I can hear her voice. If I can hear her voice, she's got to be here somewhere. I wonder where she is. I wonder where she's hiding. The sofa. The sofa is big enough for a grown-up to hide behind. Maybe she's hiding behind the sofa. But here's the strange part. I don't have any sense that these images or thoughts are important, and I don't perceive their meaning. The thoughts and images don't feel important, and I don't even recognize that they're coming from my own memories. In fact, this effect is so complete that I tell my prayer partner, it's not working, nothing's coming, I'm not getting anything. Fortunately, he knows about this phenomena, so he coaches me to just describe whatever comes into my awareness. You know the drill. Just describe whatever's come into your awareness, regardless of whether or not it feels important or makes any sense. So eventually I cooperate. And as soon as I start to describe these thoughts and images out loud to my prayer partner, this huge wave of emotions wells up inside of me. I start sobbing, and all of a sudden I recognize, oh my goodness, these thoughts and images or emotions are coming from my time at the Wetzels. I'm on the phone with Mom. I'm remembering being at the Wetzels, talking to Mom on the telephone. When I was 18 months old, I had not been able to understand that Mom could be 150 miles away and still be talking to me. I figured if I can hear her voice, she's got to be nearby somewhere. She's got to be here in the room with me. And here's the point. As long as the content was isolated inside my head, I was not able to feel its importance or to perceive its meaning. But as I described it out loud to my prayer partner, both of these pieces fell into place, and I became able to feel that it was important and to see what it meant. Let me share another example. So, I'm facilitating an Immanuel approach session, and after the initial prayer, asking Jesus to guide every thought, image, memory, emotion, and physical sensation coming into the person's awareness, she pauses for a minute or two, and then reports, it's not working. Nothing's coming. I'm not getting anything. However, with coaching to describe whatever is coming into her awareness, regardless of whether or not it makes any sense or feels important, she eventually acknowledges that, well, actually, she has been getting a mental image, but she assures me that it doesn't make any sense and that it's certainly not important. With more coaching, she eventually describes, I just see myself in the car with my family. I'm just sitting in the car, looking out the window as we're driving down the highway. But then she suddenly recognizes, wait, oh my goodness. This image is from the beginning of the trip to visit Uncle Bob. This image is from the beginning of that trip. And then she goes on to describe how the image that she's been getting was from the beginning of a trip that had ended in deep rejection. How the image that had initially felt so unimportant and seemed so irrelevant was actually from the beginning of a really important unresolved traumatic memory. Just as with my experience, as long as the content was isolated inside her head, she was not able to feel its importance or to perceive its meaning. But as she described it out loud to me, both of these pieces fell into place, and she became able to feel that it was important and to recognize what it meant. As part of this same discussion about how our brains are designed to work best in community, the Big Lion book provides a detailed description of a fascinating, compelling neurological case study about a man who develops a brain tumor in his right prefrontal cortex. I don't have time to describe the details here, but the short summary is that damage to his right prefrontal cortex eliminates his ability to feel the importance of options, choices, and mental content. For example, if he was on the way to his daughter's birthday party and he noticed a barber shop that was conveniently located and offering a special sale on quick trims, he might decide to skip his daughter's party because he could not feel that being present for his daughter's party was more important than taking advantage of this convenient and cost-saving opportunity to get his hair cut. A large body of neurological case studies and other research regarding the prefrontal cortex provides additional pieces to the puzzle. The right prefrontal cortex is the primary area for interactions with other people, and especially for face-to-face communication. The left prefrontal cortex is especially involved in language-based communication. And both right and left prefrontal cortices are heavily involved in perceiving the meaning of a particular piece of mental content, and especially in perceiving how any particular mental content relates to one's personal story. Putting all of these pieces together, we get the following. 1. Our internal mental content needs to be processed through our right-sided prefrontal cortex in order for us to be able to feel its importance. If a particular piece of relevant, significant mental content is not processed through our right-sided prefrontal cortex, we can look right at it and not feel its importance. Like in the emotional healing session for my separation trauma, when I was looking right at the images and thoughts from my time with the Wetzels, but could not feel that they were important. 2. Our internal mental content needs to be processed through both our right and left prefrontal cortices in order for us to be able to perceive its meaning, and especially for us to be able to recognize how a given piece of content relates to our personal story. If a particular piece of important, meaningful mental content is not processed through both prefrontal cortices, we can look right at it and not perceive its meaning or recognize how it relates to our personal story. Like in the emotional healing session for my separation trauma, when I was looking right at the images and thoughts from my time with the Wetzels, but could not perceive their importance or even recognize that they were coming from my own memories. 3. The face-to-face social interaction task of communicating with another person causes the content we are describing to be processed through the right prefrontal cortex. And 4. The language task of getting words to describe our mental content causes the content to be processed through the left prefrontal cortex. Therefore, when we describe our mental content to a prayer partner or prayer circle, the combination of the social interaction task and the language task causes the content we are describing to be processed through both our right and left prefrontal cortices, and thereby enables us to feel the importance of the contents we are describing, to perceive the meaning of the content we are describing, and especially to recognize how the content relates to our personal stories. These benefits will help us to perceive Jesus' presence by helping us to feel the importance and recognize the meaning of subtle manifestations of his presence that we might otherwise miss. And these benefits will help us to connect with Jesus by helping us to feel the importance and recognize the meaning of subtle interactive content coming from Jesus that we might otherwise miss. My own experience provides a good example. My perceptions of Jesus' presence are usually very subtle and faint. Content that comes to me from Jesus is usually very subtle and faint. And I consistently find that I am much more able to perceive his presence and to recognize and receive the content that comes from him when I can describe what's coming into my awareness out loud to another person. So if you have just been doing these Immanuel exercises by yourself, and you have not been perceiving and connecting with the Lord as you observe me experiencing in these demonstrations, it may be because you are not benefiting from the ways our brains work best in community. As you can see, as I am doing these exercises, I'm describing everything that comes into my awareness out loud to Charlotte. Even in the bonus content segments where you can't see Charlotte, I am describing everything that comes into my awareness out loud to you as the audience and also to Charlotte behind the camera. And this describing my mental content out loud to another person helps me to feel the importance and recognize the meaning of subtle manifestations of Jesus' presence and subtle content from Jesus. So, again, if you are just doing the exercises by yourself, then you are not receiving these benefits. Therefore, in light of everything I have discussed regarding how our brains work best in community, I really, really, really encourage you to do Immanuel approach sessions with a prayer partner or practice group so that you can also benefit from the ways in which our brains work best in community. So now Charlotte and I will demonstrate. We will demonstrate, again, going through the initial steps in the Immanuel approach process using a positive memory that includes experiencing the Lord's presence. After getting the interactive connection in place, we will demonstrate looking at and thinking about an issue or question with Jesus. And throughout the session, Charlotte will demonstrate repeatedly coaching me to describe everything that comes into my awareness. And now, after the explanations about how our brains work best in community, you will understand why Charlotte coaches me so persistently and explicitly. Describe everything that comes into your awareness, regardless of whether or not it feels important, makes sense, or is neatly packaged. To summarize very quickly, first, Charlotte will help me to find a positive memory and then help me to recall and reconnect with the details until I feel appreciation. And as with the demonstration for training segment number 2, I'll use a memory that includes a connection with the Lord. To take advantage of the way in which our relationships are carried in our memories, and to take advantage of the way in which reconnecting with a memory of connecting with God will recreate, at least to some extent, the same conditions that worked for connecting with God in the original experience. When I am connected to the memory and feel appreciation, Charlotte will coach me to offer what I call the Immanuel invitation and request prayer. She will coach me to pray something like, Jesus, I thank you that you are here with me in this memory, and I welcome your presence. Help me to perceive your living presence. Help me to make the transition from remembering you with me to perceiving you and connecting with you as a living, interactive presence. And after the Immanuel invitation and request prayer, Charlotte will coach me to ask Jesus, how do you feel about being with me? As described in training segments 1 and 2, once I have established an interactive connection with Jesus, there are a number of options for what to do with the rest of the session. For this demonstration, Charlotte will help me to look at and think about a question or issue with Jesus. Finally, throughout the session, Charlotte will repeatedly coach me to observe and describe whatever comes into my awareness. And again, as I describe my mental content out loud to Charlotte, I will be benefiting from the ways in which our brains work best in community, and that's part of why these exercises are so effective for me. I really, really encourage you. Find a way to work with an Immanuel approach prayer partner or practice group so that you can also share what comes into your awareness with another person and thereby benefit from the ways in which our brains work best in community. Now let us show you what this looks like.
So the first step is to find a positive memory to recall and reconnect with. If you have a memory that includes experiencing God's presence, that would be ideal, but we can also just start with any positive memory. For example, a memory of getting a Christmas present you particularly enjoyed, a memory of a special experience from a family vacation, a memory of playing with a favorite pet, a memory of an especially positive time with friends, a memory of a beautiful nature experience, or a memory of thoroughly enjoying your favorite meal.
Yeah, I have a memory.
Okay, so I want you to close your eyes and imagine yourself being back inside of the original experience and describe the memory in as much detail as possible. For example, what did you see, hear, smell, taste, feel on your skin? What thoughts were you having at the time? What thoughts come as you think about it now? What emotions were you having at the time? What emotions come as you think about it now? How does your body feel? So I want you to focus on and describe the details until you feel appreciation.
Yeah, so I'm remembering when I was doing I went to medical school in Kansas City, but I had this away rotation where I did a rotation for a month in Charleston, South Carolina. And sometimes I would go out real early in the morning and walk along the beach. So this morning I got up and I'm out on the beach, maybe 5:30 or something. It was 20 minutes before sunrise. And the sky was getting light and beautiful. There was a lot of colors in the sky. And the ocean was just flat. I've almost never seen the ocean like that. It was just a mirror. It's just like glass. So all the beauty and the color in the sky was reflected. So it's kind of a double image of the sunrise. And the sand, the beach was beautiful. The tide had been going out all night, so it had been washing and smoothing the sand. So there's this wide, flat, perfect beach. Not a footprint. I was the first person there. There wasn't a person or a footprint as far as I could see in either direction. It was just perfect and calm and quiet. And so I started walking along the beach. And I noticed, after walking for a while, in the distance there's this big dark patch, large, quite a ways off. And as I got closer to it, I realized there was these little teeny dark specks. It was like this huge area of the beach where there were these little dark specks, all spaced evenly. And as I got maybe 50, 60 feet away, I had my binoculars with me, and so I looked with my binoculars, and I realized it was like 100,000 to 200,000 tree swallows. It was the super flock, the East Coast super flock of migrating tree swallows down the coast, and they were all just resting on the sand on the beach, and they were spaced just evenly. Each little swallow, they were like 6 inches apart, perfectly evenly spaced, each one with their own little spot, just sitting quietly on the sand. And as I got closer, when I was maybe 30 feet away, and the sun is just coming out of the water. It's just coming above the horizon. So the first rays of the rising sun, that warm orange, pink, rich hue. I'm looking at the tree swallows, and they're a beautiful bird. They have this dazzling white breast, and their backs are this intense, iridescent blue. And with the direct sunlight, the sun's just coming out of the water, and their brilliant white breasts were just lit up with this warm, orange, pink sunrise sunlight. I keep getting a little bit closer, and with my binoculars, I can see their eyes blinking. I can see their little feet moving as they shuffle around. And when I'm 20, 30 feet away, I can hear them chittering. This huge, big congregation. They're all just chittering quietly, and with the sun 10 minutes above the horizon now, it's just the light is bright and clear, and it's just a spectacular view of this beautiful bird. And then this huge flock of them. It was like 100 feet wide, maybe the length of 2 or 3 football fields. I just inched a little bit closer, and when I'm maybe 15 or 20 feet away, the whole flock just lifts up into the air. And they didn't leave. For 15 or 20 minutes, they just stayed there within 10 feet of the ground. Yeah, they didn't fly up into the sky. They just stayed right close to the ground, right on the beach, just flying, and probably getting all the little bugs in the area. I just walked into the cloud. It was like walking into a snowstorm or like snowflakes. I walked into this giant cloud of tree swallows, and they're flying so close to me. I can hear them chittering, and their wingtips are flicking my hair. And I'm just thinking, this is the most amazing experience in my life. It was certainly it was a once-in-a-lifetime nature experience. Totally one of the highlights of my lifetime nature enjoyment. And at the time this first happened, when I was in medical school, I was not aware of the Lord's tangible presence, personal presence. Just like with my Grand Canyon Pentecost Summer Tanager memory, it started out as just a beautiful nature memory. And then I used this swallow memory for an Immanuel exercise, and we upgraded it. So in the Immanuel session, when I started out with this as just a nature memory, I went to this part of the memory where I'm walking into the cloud, I'm walking through the middle of the cloud of tree swallows. And I did that prayer, Lord, I welcome your presence. Help me to perceive your living, interactive presence here with me. And then just right away, I had this image of Jesus standing. He's walking next to me, and he has this big grin on his face, and he's just an expression of joy and wonder, and he's just like looking up in the air and looking as the swallows are all flying around us. And he goes to me, he turns to me, and he goes, "Can you believe this, Karl? Yeah, this is so amazing." And we're both just kind of excited to be together, and we're just like both, wow, this is so amazing. Can you believe this? And that was an amazing experience to start with, and that was a really poignant, beautiful experience to share it with, to become aware of the rest of the truth that he was there with me enjoying it. And so there's my Immanuel nature memory. I definitely can feel appreciation there.
Okay. Well, so now I want you to pray something like, Jesus, I welcome you to be with me in this memory. Help me to perceive your living presence. Help me to make the transition from remembering you with me to perceiving your presence as living and interactive. And then describe everything that comes into your awareness, regardless of whether it feels important, makes sense, or is neatly packaged.
Yeah, so Lord, I welcome your presence. I welcome you to be with me in this memory. I do ask you to help me perceive your living presence. Help me to turn that corner. Help me to make that transition from just remembering you with me to experience your presence as living and interactive right here with me today. So it's kind of like, not sure how he does this, but I have a quarter, a third maybe, I'm sort of still in the memory, and he's sort of there, still kind of like, that was so amazing. And then I'm also kind of perceiving his presence, kind of a subtle image of his face in front of me here, where he's kind of has a big smile on his face, and he's kind of like, that was really amazing, wasn't it? He's and kind of the like, often he doesn't say words to me, but I can just sort of, he lets me kind of be inside his head, where I can sort of share his thoughts with him, and then so I can sort of perceive that he's thinking, that was really amazing, wasn't it? And also, like, it's fun. He's really enjoying remembering it with me.
Okay, so I'd like you to ask Jesus, how do you feel about being with me? I mean, if you already have an interactive connection, the interaction with Jesus around this question can enrich the connection. And if you're not sure whether your perception of Jesus is still just a memory or whether his presence is living and interactive, this question can help clarify. If you're perceiving Jesus' living interactive presence, then you'll sense a living interactive response to your question.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely already having an interactive connection. So yeah, Lord, we'll go for the upgrade, for the enriched. We'll enrich it even further. So yeah, Lord, how do you feel about being with me? And kind of sense, even as I was asking the question, he's kind of got a little grin, sort of like, yeah, we go. I often it's somewhere. I understand I understand the meaning immediately, but it takes a while to get words for it. But it's kind of like, yeah, we already know, or he's almost chuckling as if we can't already tell that I'm really enjoying being here with you, or kind of like we all know the answer to that question, but not even saying, just sort of as he's here with me and he has the smile that flashes, it's in his thoughts. It's like, yeah, of course, I enjoy being with you. So that's the thought comes to he particularly enjoys appreciating nature with me because I can appreciate it so thoroughly. I can share the appreciation with him more than many who just don't know as much about nature. And the more you know, the more deeply you can appreciate it. So he particularly enjoys appreciating his creation with me because we can do that together at a particularly intense, rich level. For a more basic version of the demonstration, you can stop here, at the point that the initial steps in the process have established an interactive connection with Jesus.
Okay, great. Well, so now for the remainder of the session, I'm going to help you look at and think about an issue or a question with Jesus. Do you have an issue or a question that you want to work on?
Yeah, I would like to look at and think about just the whole question, the whole issue of, Lord, how can I be the best possible steward of this whole Immanuel approach adventure? I mean, not like it's mine, but to the extent that you've given it to me to be a part of, how can I participate in your plan, Lord? How can I be the best possible steward? How can I take the best care of the whole global Immanuel Approach community? And how can I care for the principles and tools you've sort of shown me and helped me to develop? How can I be the best steward of this whole package of material that it feels like you're kind of asking me to help care for?
Okay. So here's the general battle plan. First, you focus on Jesus and pray something like, Jesus, can you please look at this, think about this with me? What do you want me to know about how to be the best possible steward of the Immanuel approach? And then describe whatever comes into your awareness, regardless of whether it feels important, makes sense, or is neatly packaged. And then, as new pieces come forward, I'll coach you to focus on each new piece and get words for what's in your heart regarding the new piece. I'll coach you to focus on Jesus, talk directly to Jesus about what's in your heart, and then ask him for guidance and help. I'll coach you to describe whatever comes into your awareness, regardless of whether it feels important, makes sense, or is neatly packaged. So, back to the first step. I want you to focus on Jesus and pray something like, Jesus, can you please look at this, think about this with me? What do you want me to know about how to be the best possible steward of the Immanuel approach? And then describe whatever comes into your awareness, regardless of whether it feels important, makes sense, or is neatly packaged.
Yeah, so Jesus, can you please look at and think about this with me? What do you want me to know about how can I be the best possible steward of this whole Immanuel approach adventure, to whatever extent you're asking me to be a part of that, Lord. It's like Jesus is still here with me. I still perceive his presence, but I don't perceive anything that feels like an answer to my question. I have a big jumble of thoughts in my head, but I don't feel like I'm getting anything that feels like it's from Jesus. I don't feel like I'm getting anything that makes sense or seems clear or valuable or helpful.
Well, sometimes there is something coming from the Lord, but it'll be subtle, and so you won't recognize it until you describe it out loud. So the key is to just describe whatever is coming into your awareness, regardless of whether it feels important or makes sense or is neatly packaged yet. And just start describing the jumble as best you can. And I want you to talk directly to Jesus with me listening in, as opposed to you're like talking to me and then Jesus is on the periphery.
Right. Yeah, so Jesus. Trying to kind of get words. So I try to pick out some part of this jumble that I can get words for. So one part of the jumble in my head is just the whole question of how can I best help the Immanuel approach to grow and spread. Like, Lord, to me it seems like every single person on the planet would benefit from experiencing your personal, tangible, living, interactive presence. And it seems to me, I would guess that there's already millions who could embrace the Immanuel Approach material we've already developed, and they could use it right. They could start using it right away if they just knew about it. So, how can we most effectively reach these people, Lord? And how can we quickly reach the millions that are already ready? And for the long run, how do we reach the people they just don't yet know that learning to have interactive connection with your living, tangible, personal friendship, interactive presence, that's like the best thing. They don't know what they're missing. They don't know that that's the most important, most strategic, most life-giving thing they could possibly do. So so what I'm doing, it feels like my approach at the moment, Lord, is everybody who's already in the Immanuel Approach community, I encourage them, exhort them, implore them, please, please, please help us share this with the rest of the world. Wherever it feels appropriate, talk to your spouse, your family, your siblings, your friends, your colleagues, the people at your church, your people in your prayer circle. Get training, learn how to facilitate Immanuel Approach sessions and actually coach Immanuel Approach sessions for your friends, for your family, for your children, for your spouse, for your people in your prayer circle, for your clients if you're a mental health professional. And even if you don't feel led to do big seminars, even ones and twos, watch for people who they have the maturity, they have the capacity, they have the maturity skills to be a good coach. Watch for people that you feel like are ready to take it to the next level and help them learn how to do it. Even, hey, try it on me. There's ways to start easy, start simple, shallow into the pool. Help other people learn to facilitate Immanuel Approach sessions, and then they can coach sessions for their family and their friends and their the people around them. So invite and encourage the people already in the community. Hey, help us share this, and then I try to give them the best possible resources to help them succeed. If somebody asks, hey, I want to share this with my professional colleagues, I point them to chapter 3 in the Big Lion book. I wrote that chapter to be an introduction resource for mental health professionals, and there's a couple essays that were particularly written for the purpose of helping people introduce this to mental health professionals. And the live ministry session, the condensed versions of the live ministry sessions are good for introducing. It's a 18-minute introduction. You can see a Reader's Digest version of a live session. Yeah. So that feels like the organic approach, from one person to the next in the context of relationship. That's kind of what I'm doing already, and that feels the most natural to me. But do you want me to do something completely different? Should we mortgage the house and take out a big loan and hire some marketing firm to come up with some big business expansion plan? It feels like there would be a whole pile of complicated pros and cons for each of those options, and there's there's 14 intermediate options in between the two extremes. And it feels like it would take me 30 more minutes just to even describe all the issues and the questions and the pros and cons, just to put the whole question in front of you and name all the pieces. It would take 30 more minutes. And then another whole part of the big jumble in my head, it's what about quality control? How much control should I be exercising over the people who are facilitating Immanuel approach sessions, and over those who are doing training in one context or another? Do I just supply them with the best possible resources, the big Lion book and the live ministry sessions, and then exhort them to help us share this with the rest of the world, and read chapter 39 in the big Lion book, because that whole chapter is about, if you want to facilitate sessions or if you want to train, how do you know you're facilitating or teaching the genuine Immanuel approach? So here are a bunch of resources. Read chapter 39 so you can make sure you're maintaining the integrity of the material, and then just give them a lot of freedom. Go forth and multiply. Bless you. Or do I should I exercise a whole nother level of control? You can't use the term. You can't tell people you're facilitating Immanuel approach sessions unless you go through some certification process. You have to pass a test to demonstrate you correctly understand the principles. I need to certify that I need to watch you do an actual session or 10 and certify that yes, indeed, you are able to actually facilitate a safe, effective, genuine Immanuel approach session. And if you want to train, I need to look at all your material and verify that it's synchronized and compatible with the stuff we're saying and teaching. And there's a whole complicated pile of pros and cons for each of those options, and there's 14 different intermediate possibilities in between the extremes, and that's it would take me a half an hour just to name all the pieces and questions and issues and pros and cons, to even just to articulate the whole pile and put it on the table would take 30 more minutes. And then another part of the whole big jumble in my head is just the overwhelm factor, just purely the size of the pile of practical tasks that need to be done, the to-do list.
Well, can I check in a little bit here? Are you still perceiving Jesus? I mean, does it feel like you're sharing all of this with Jesus? Does it feel like Jesus is hearing and understanding all of this?
Yeah. Good job, facilitator. Cheryl just demonstrated how the coach is supposed to help the person keep their focus on Jesus. Because, I definitely started, now that I turn my focus back to the Lord, I can perceive I can still get the same image of his face there. And I definitely started talking directly to Jesus, and it felt like he was listening and hearing and understanding what I was saying But it did seem like I was kind of drifting more and more towards talking to you, and with Jesus kind of being on the periphery.
Okay, well, so keep going, but try to focus on Jesus and talk directly to him, to Jesus, with me listening in as opposed to, mostly talking to me. And just keep describing everything that's coming into your awareness, just like you've been doing.
Yeah. So yeah, where were we? The overwhelmingness of the pile of practical tasks. So yeah, Lord. Okay, so one of the first tasks on the list is taking more time for discernment regarding these two big strategic questions we've already talked about. I mean, that's going to take some more time. And yeah, I still have the private practice. That feels important. It takes a lot of time, but it feels important to be able to test and prove the principles and tools we come up with that you show me, that I try to develop. It feels important to be able to test and prove them in the context of ongoing care for real patients. And there's this whole big new video training package that, like this right here, that we're working on. It's going to take a couple hundred more hours before this is completely finished, to the point of being able to actually have DVDs and packages that we can mail to people. And there's 5 new live ministry DVD projects that have been mostly just on hold for the last couple of years because I just haven't been able to get to them. And I feel like it's important to get all of our DVD teaching content and all of our live ministry sessions like in digital format, so people can get those as digital downloads. I want to get both the books in digital format. I want to make the 300-page pain processing pathway essay into a book. I want to make the discerning truth and memory essay into a book. I want to improve the website. I get emails from people who write about different aspects of emotional healing. Can you read my book and write an endorsement for it? There's 25 of our old essays that I need to review and edit and update and improve. There's 20 new essays that need to be written for all the good questions people send me, good questions people are asking. There's like a steady stream of emails. Can you please make an exception and let me in your practice? And can you see my daughter or my son or my spouse or me or my mom or my best friend or therapists write me, hey, I've got this great big complicated clinical situation that takes them 3 pages to describe. Can you please help me figure out how to move forward here? People ask ask for consultations regarding specific, more focused questions. People, I get emails, hey, can you come to our town and to our church, to our ministry, and provide your Immanuel approach training seminars for us? Can you start more mentoring groups? Can you come to our conference and do a presentation about the Immanuel approach? Can you write scholarly articles for professional journals to help bring more mental health professionals into the community? Oh, golly. It's like, even part of what's overwhelming is like, those are all good requests. It's not even like most of them are just dumb. If I had 250 hours per day, I would happily say yes to all those requests. I love being in the middle of the Immanuel approach, and I wish I could say yes to all these requests, but it's like totally impossible. So the whole overwhelm it just feels totally overwhelming.
Okay, well, let me just check in again. Are you still perceiving Jesus? Does it feel like you're sharing all of this with Jesus? Does it feel like Jesus is hearing and understanding all of this?
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of interesting, actually, because he's still right here with me. And it's like I'm going back and forth between two different internal images. Like if I look up, I kind of have an image of his face. And I'm kind of talking directly to him. He's kind of looking at me and paying attention and smiling. And then at the same time, it's like we're sitting next to each other and we have all this stuff on a coffee table in front of us. And we're both focusing kind of on the questions and issues, but we can, out of our peripheral vision, we can see each other, and I can feel that he's looking at it and thinking about it with me, and I feel like I'm kind of going back and forth between those two images. It's just a little teaching point. It's good to ask that question. There's no harm if you ask the person and they say, "Oh yes, he is still here with me." No harm done. It's better to ask the question and realize that it's okay than it is to let the person go on without when they've lost track of Jesus. So
Okay. Well, so great. So then stay with that image of going back and forth between looking at Jesus in front of you and Jesus sitting beside you, and pray something like, Jesus, can you please look at, think about all of this with me? What do you want me to know about this big pile of issues and questions about how to best steward the Immanuel approach? And then describe whatever comes into your awareness, regardless of whether it feels important, makes sense, or is neatly packaged.
yeah, so yeah, can you please look at and think about this with me, Lord? All of this whole great big jumble of thoughts, these different big questions. Can you look at these and think about these with me? What do you want me to know about how to best steward the Immanuel approach, Lord? It's kind of subtle, but I feel like I'm kind of getting the thought or the sense from Jesus that he wants to look at these big pieces one at a time. And I kind of have the sense he wants to start with the overwhelm. He wants to look at the whole overwhelm piece together first.
Okay. Well, so keep focusing on Jesus and pray something like, Jesus, can you please look at and think about the overwhelmed piece with me? What do you want me to know about the overwhelmed piece? And then describe whatever comes into your awareness, regardless of whether it feels important, makes sense, or is neatly packaged.
Yeah. So yeah, can you please look at and think about, Jesus, can you look at and think about the whole overwhelm? Like there's such an overwhelming pile of practical tasks. It's hard to know where to even start. What do you want me to know about that, Lord? Can I just get a little smile? Just a little flicker of just sort of, just feeling as sometimes he kind of lets me just sort of, like I experience from inside of him. He just shares his thought with me, or kind of, I can just sort of feel what he's feeling. It's an easy, efficient way to communicate, much better than words. I just sort of got a flicker of he likes my heart, how passionately I want to help people experience his presence. How hard he likes, he appreciates, somehow he enjoys that I'm working so hard at this, or he's pleased with that. And the kind of the thought that comes to me, or a sense I get, is that I think this is from Jesus. We can test it together, but that he wants me to especially focus on preparing the best possible resources that everybody else can use. Like that's particularly strategic. That's a task that's especially hard for anybody else to do for me, and that I'm particularly well suited to do. My just training and education and experience, and just and kind of the thought about that. He's kind of reminding me of that old saying, like the second best can be the enemy of the worst enemy of the first best, because it's I don't have any temptation to go spend my free time sitting in a bar watching television, but all these other I'm real tempted to spend more time answering specific questions, or maybe I should let that person into my practice. And I feel like he's sort of showing me that as like, it's important that I really primarily focus my attention on preparing the best possible resources, and that pretty much I think I'm supposed to say no to everything else. Like, there's complexity. There will be an occasional rare strategic exception. But I think he's kind of showing me that mostly I need to say no to everything else so I can focus on this particularly strategic task for me. And kind of the thought comes with just sort of the sense of one day at a time, like throughout the day, each day, to be sort of asking the Holy Spirit for guidance about how to navigate this complicated dance, where to say no, when to make the rare strategic exception, how to prioritize, just be constantly asking the Holy Spirit for guidance about how to navigate this challenging task of what to prioritize. And a little flicker, a little smile again, maybe kind of just a little glimpse or a sense of his heart, kind of he's kind of like he's happy, or he sort of reassuring me that I've been doing okay. I was like, that he's kind of pleased, and it's like he's very good about being precise and honest. He understands the way my brain works. He's like, well, it's not perfect, but pretty good. B+. But not a bad start. I mean, he's pleased with how well I've been trying to hear his guidance. So it's like, you've been doing pretty good already. And right with that, I kind of get the sense or the thought, he's kind of showing me that there are some trauma splinters that kind of get in the way, that hinder. Oh, that's why it's a B+ and not an A. Like the thought comes to me, I'm remembering some of my childhood church trauma, thinking about being a kid and listening to a number of similar sermons, people talking about those passages where he talks about the least of these, and when did we care for you? When did we feed you when you were hungry? When did we clothe you when you were naked? And whatsoever you did unto these, whatsoever you did for the least of my brethren, that you did for me. And then the poor goats that get into the darkness, and whatever you didn't do for the least of these, that you didn't do unto me. And I think so here I am, I'm 5 years old, 6 years old, 8 years old, sitting in the front row, and some of these speakers, some of these people are visiting speakers, it's my perception is kind of somewhat angry activists, and they don't, to my perception, they never even acknowledge what we're already doing. They just hammer us to do more, and that whole package. In my child heart, it felt like the only thing Jesus is going to notice is if you didn't do if there are any hungry people you didn't feed, and if there are any naked people you didn't clothe, and if there's any prisoners you didn't visit, that's all he's going to notice. And Jesus is going to judge us as failures if we don't take care of everybody. And it feels like there's still some trauma splinters there. I've worked on these memories before, but I feel like there's still some splinters. There's still some kid place that feels like Jesus is demanding that I do everything and take care of everybody, and that it's like I can't say no, and I'm not allowed to have any boundaries. And it's interesting because I realize I'm kind of remembering. I'm sort of on one part of the screen. I'm sort of remembering these childhood experiences, and I'm still sensing Jesus here. And it's kind of like the Jesus I perceived as a child was in my child memories. When they're talking, I'm kind of picturing Jesus, and the Jesus in my head as a child seems really different. And the Jesus is here. And I'm kind of remembering too, there's a lot of experiences in my childhood where saying no didn't turn out well. And I think there's some trauma splitters in those too. There's a kid place where it's like it's not safe to say no. If you say no, someone's going to get angry, someone's going to yell at you, someone's going to cut you off relationally. And I think the Lord's kind of showing me that the splinters in both of these kind of piles of related traumas kind of hinder, they make it hard for me to hear the Holy Spirit when I'm trying to discern all this complexity. When those splinters get triggered, it makes it hard for me. It interferes with my ability to hear the Holy Spirit. And then the thought that comes is, even when I do hear the Holy Spirit, and I'm actually pretty close to the target, or I'm pretty on target, I can't feel it because these triggers make me worry. It's hard for me to really feel peace that I'm hearing the Lord's guidance and that I'm doing well, because these triggers kind of are always smoldering in these little splinters that I haven't gotten finished. And that. So my guess is the average viewer can tell that we could certainly spend more time. I could productively take several more sessions to work on this whole how can I be the best steward question. We could easily spend more time on those memories right there, and we didn't even start on the other two big questions that we talked about earlier. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I think this is a good place to close for today. So thank you, sweetheart, for helping me with another demonstration.
You're welcome.
Love you.
Love you.
So there you go. That's what it looks like to go through the initial steps in the Immanuel approach process using a positive memory that includes experiencing God's presence. That's what it looks like after getting an interactive connection with the Lord in place to coach the recipient to look at and think about an issue or question with God. And that's what it looks like to repeatedly coach the recipient to describe everything that's coming into his awareness. I want to remind you again, if you do not yet have positive memories that include a connection with God, you can start with any positive memory, like I did in segment 1 with the Grand Canyon Pentecost Summer Tanager memory when it was still just a beautiful nature memory. And I want to remind you again, this basic Immanuel approach process does not always work right away for everybody. The good news is that if the process does not work for you, it just means that there are blockages in the way. And when you resolve the blockages, you will consistently be able to perceive God's presence and be able to establish an interactive connection with God. See Training Segment 4 for an introduction to basic troubleshooting, and see the Big Lion book for a thorough discussion of basic, intermediate, and advanced troubleshooting. Finally, I want to note that this teaching to describe everything that comes into your awareness is referring to mental content that does not initially make sense or feel important. This teaching is not encouraging you to force yourself to share vulnerable content that you are not yet ready to share. See Chapter 16, page 199, in the Big Lion book for a much more detailed discussion of this point. So let me close with a prayer. Lord, we thank you again for the wonderful, good news Immanuel truth that you are always with us, that you are always glad to be with us, and that you always want to connect with us. Help us to use these simple tools to perceive you and to establish an interactive connection with your wonderful, living, gentle, strong, loving, compassionate, comforting friendship presence. And help us to find prayer partners so that we can take advantage of the ways you have designed our brains to work best in community. Amen. Amen. We love you. We miss you. Bless you.